Daniel, you are the man I want to marry. The words came through Daniel Brooks's phone at 12:46 in the morning, soft enough that for one strange second, he wondered if he had heard them correctly. He stood alone in his kitchen outside Denver, one hand resting beside the lunchbox he had just finished packing for his 9-year-old daughter, Emily. Upstairs, the house was quiet. The dishwasher hummed. Rain tapped lightly against the window above the sink. Daniel looked at the name glowing on his screen. Victoria Hayes, Chief Executive Officer of Hayes Development. His boss, and a woman who, during 6 weeks of knowing him, had never once seemed uncertain about anything. Victoria? A pause followed. You heard me. I heard you. Then say something. Daniel recognized something unusual in her voice now, a looseness between the words, emotion slipping through places usually protected by perfect control. Where are you? He asked. Home. Are you alone? My driver brought me back from the gala. I am home, Daniel. He exhaled quietly. Good. Victoria gave a small, embarrassed laugh. That is your answer? Good. How much did you drink tonight? Silence. Enough to make that an annoying question. Water. On the table. Drink some. Daniel. Please. He heard movement, then the faint sound of a glass being lifted. Daniel waited. There was no triumph in his face, no amusement at hearing one of the most powerful executives in Denver confess something she might regret by sunrise. Dignity was easy when nothing tempted you to abandon it. Character revealed itself when another person's vulnerable moment could have become your advantage. I meant it, Victoria said. Maybe you did. Maybe. Tonight is not when I am going to decide that. Her voice sharpened. You think I do not know what I am saying? I think you deserve to know tomorrow. Another silence settled between them. Daniel glanced toward the staircase. A small nightlight glowed in the hallway above, the one Emily insisted they leave on because darkness made the house feel too empty. Victoria, get some sleep. You are avoiding me. No. Then answer the question I did not ask. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Marriage is not a sentence people should have to investigate the next morning. Victoria said nothing. If you mean it when you wake up, he continued, call me again. Her voice became quieter. And if I am too embarrassed? Call me anyway. What if I am too afraid? Daniel looked through the rain-darkened window. He understood fear better than she knew. 7 years earlier, he had learned how quickly a future could become a memory. Since then, he had built his life around promises he could keep. School pickup, dinner at 6, science projects, Saturday pancakes, being there. Love was no longer something he treated casually. Then be afraid, he said gently. But be honest. Victoria breathed out slowly. You really are not going to answer me tonight. I am answering you. It does not feel like it. Daniel's voice stayed calm. I will not build tomorrow on something you may need to apologize for in the morning. The line went quiet again. Then Victoria whispered, You are different from every man I know. Daniel looked toward Emily's lunchbox. Maybe you know the wrong man. A tired laugh escaped her. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Victoria. He was about to end the call when she spoke once more. If I call tomorrow, will you pick up? Daniel paused. Yes. The call ended. Victoria stared at her silent phone in a penthouse filled with expensive things and no one waiting for her. Daniel remained in his modest kitchen beneath a $40 ceiling light, surrounded by evidence of an ordinary life he would protect at any cost. Neither of them slept easily, and by morning, Victoria would understand that Daniel had not rejected her. He had done something far more unsettling to a woman accustomed to getting immediate answers. He had asked her to choose him twice. 6 weeks earlier, Daniel Brooks was known at Hayes Development for one habit that Grant Whitaker considered almost offensive. At 5 o'clock, Daniel left. Not 5:15. Not after one more executive meeting. At 5. That Monday afternoon, the Denver office was glowing beneath the last warm light of the day when Grant appeared beside Daniel's desk. We moved the project review to 5:30. Daniel closed his laptop. I will read the notes tomorrow morning. Victoria will be there. I understand. Grant stared at him. The chief executive officer will be there. Daniel slipped his phone into his pocket. She will still be chief executive officer tomorrow. Grant did not smile. Daniel picked up his worn leather messenger bag and walked toward the elevators. To people who measured ambition by how late a man remained beneath fluorescent lights, Daniel Brooks looked like someone going nowhere. They did not see the clock above Emily's elementary school entrance. They did not know that his 9-year-old daughter waited near the front office every afternoon with a purple backpack, 2 missing front teeth, and absolute faith that her father would appear when he promised. At 5:23, Daniel's aging silver pickup rolled into the school parking lot. Emily climbed inside and immediately held up a paper covered in red marker. 98. Daniel studied it seriously. What happened to the other 2 points? Dad, I am concerned. I spelled photosynthesis wrong. That word has been causing trouble for families for generations. Emily laughed and fastened her seat belt. On the drive home, she described a science project involving soil, bean plants, and what sounded to Daniel like an unreasonable amount of responsibility for 3 plastic cups. His phone buzzed twice in the center console. He ignored it. At 6:10, he was standing over a skillet making grilled cheese while Emily worked at the kitchen table. His phone rang again. This time the screen showed Victoria Hayes. Daniel answered. Brooks, you missed the review. Her voice was controlled, polished, unmistakably irritated. Yes. Grant said you knew I would be there. I did, and you still left. Daniel flipped one sandwich. I had somewhere I needed to be. There was a pause. More important than the Riverside project? Daniel glanced toward Emily, who was drawing labels beside 3 little plant diagrams. Yes. Victoria was not accustomed to hearing that answer. Hayes Development managed hundreds of millions of dollars in commercial projects across Colorado, and most employees treated a meeting with her like an opportunity worth rearranging their lives around. May I ask where? She said. School pickup. Another pause. You left a project review to pick up your daughter? I leave every day to pick up my daughter. You could hire someone. Daniel lowered the heat beneath the skillet. I could. Then why do you not? He looked toward Emily. Because she is 9 once. Victoria said nothing. Through the phone, Daniel could hear the muted stillness of an executive office long after most employees had gone home. The revised mechanical estimates are in the shared folder, he said. I flagged the contractor discrepancy on page 14. It will save you about $200,000 if procurement catches it before approval. Victoria turned toward the report on her desk. She found page 14. Daniel had been right. You did this before you left? At 4:37. And you were not going to mention it. You hired me to notice things. Emily lifted her grilled cheese. Dad, this one is burned. Daniel looked at it. That is caramelization. That is a lie. Victoria heard the exchange. For the first time, Daniel heard her laugh. It was brief and completely different from the careful smile she wore in meetings. Good night, Mr. Brooks, she said. Good night, Miss Hayes. After the call ended, Victoria remained alone on the 32nd floor, looking at the city lights below. Until that evening, she had assumed Daniel left at 5 because his career mattered less to him than everyone else's. She was beginning to understand something far more interesting. Daniel Brooks was ambitious. He simply refused to let ambition decide what mattered most. 3 days after Victoria heard Daniel laughing with Emily over a burned grilled cheese sandwich, the Riverside project nearly collapsed before breakfast. At 8:12 on Thursday morning, Daniel walked into the 29th floor conference room and found 12 executives staring at a presentation screen filled with revised construction numbers. Grant Whitaker stood beside the table, his expression tight. Victoria sat at the far end with an untouched cup of coffee. We are $4 million over target, Grant said. The contractor changed the mechanical package overnight. Daniel set his notebook down. No, they did not. Grant turned. Excuse me. They changed how the package is classified. Daniel stepped toward the screen. Show me the equipment schedule. Grant hesitated, but Victoria nodded. The document appeared. Daniel studied it for less than 30 seconds. Page 26. The page changed. There. You are pricing replacement equipment and new equipment in the same category. The tax treatment is different, the warranty allowance is duplicated, and somebody carried the contingency twice. Grant frowned. Our finance team reviewed this. Then they reviewed the total instead of the structure. Victoria leaned forward. How much does correcting it recover? Daniel calculated quietly. About $3.6 million before final procurement adjustments. Nobody spoke. Grant looked at the screen again. You are certain? No. Daniel picked up a marker. I am careful. For the next 40 minutes, he walked the room through every number without embarrassing the people who had missed them. He did not call anyone careless. He did not turn competence into theater. By 9:15, The crisis had become a correction. By 9:30, Victoria had made a decision. Daniel, stay. The others filed out. Grant lingered near the door. I should probably be part of this. Victoria looked at him. You should probably fix the procurement summary. Grant left. Daniel remained standing. Victoria slid a folder across the table. Director of Regional Development. 32% salary increase. Performance bonus. Company vehicle. Daniel opened the folder. That is generous. You earned it. He turned the page. Travel. 2 or 3 nights a week. Sometimes more. Daniel closed the folder. Then I cannot take it. Victoria stared at him. You have not even considered it. I just did. For 12 seconds. The important number was on page 2. She leaned back. Daniel, people spend years trying to reach this level. I know. You would turn it down because of travel? Yes. You could arrange. Childcare. Daniel's expression remained gentle, but something in his eyes changed. Emily has childcare. Then what is the problem? Childcare is not fatherhood. Victoria became quiet. Daniel rested one hand on the folder. My wife died 7 years ago. Emily was 2. The polished conference room seemed suddenly too large. I am sorry, Victoria said. Thank you. Daniel looked through the glass wall toward the Denver skyline. After she died, everybody told me I had to keep moving. Work more. Stay busy. Build something. They meant well. He paused. Then one night, Emily asked why everybody she loved kept leaving. Victoria's face softened. She was 2. Almost 3. Daniel looked back at her. I already lost one person I loved. I am not volunteering to miss my daughter's childhood too. No anger. No performance. Just a boundary built from grief and kept by grace. Victoria looked down at the promotion folder. For most of her career, she had believed sacrifice proved ambition. Daniel had just shown her that sacrifice meant very little if a person never asked what was being sacrificed. What would make you accept, she asked. Daniel considered the question. Keep me in Denver. Let me lead projects without living in airports. Judge me by what I deliver, not by how many hotel rooms I sleep in. Victoria almost smiled. You negotiate after refusing the promotion? You asked. She extended her hand. Give me until Monday. Daniel shook it. Fair enough. At 3:50 that afternoon, Victoria passed the lobby and saw Daniel kneeling beside Emily near a display table, helping her balance 3 plastic cups of soil for a school science project. Emily said something that made him laugh. Victoria stopped without meaning to. Daniel had saved millions of dollars before lunch, refused a title most people would chase for years, and was now carefully carrying bean plants toward an old pickup truck. For the first time, Victoria understood why his life unsettled her. He possessed something her success had never taught her how to buy. He knew when enough was enough. The following Saturday, Hayes Development hosted a community open house at the Riverside property, and by late afternoon the Colorado sky had turned the color of wet steel. Families toured the renovated public spaces while employees answered questions beneath temporary tents along the courtyard. Daniel had volunteered because the event ended before dinner, and Emily came with him carrying her science notebook and 3 photographs of bean plants she seemed determined to show anyone willing to look. Victoria arrived shortly after 4 in a dark blue coat, moving through donors and executives with the polished ease of someone who had spent years learning how to belong in every room without ever relaxing inside one. She noticed Daniel near the registration table. He was kneeling beside Emily, repairing the broken strap on her backpack with a small multi-tool. Emergency engineering? Victoria asked. Daniel looked up. High-risk infrastructure. Emily held up the damaged strap. It failed under textbook conditions. Victoria smiled. That sounds serious. Very. Rain began tapping against the courtyard canopy. Within 20 minutes, the outdoor portion of the event was canceled, and employees started leaving as the temperature dropped. Victoria's driver called to say traffic from a highway closure would delay him nearly an hour. Grant offered to wait with her, but she told him to go. Daniel overheard. There is a diner 2 blocks east, he said. Coffee is decent. Pie is better. Victoria looked toward the rain. Are you inviting your chief executive officer to a diner? I am informing my chief executive officer that standing in an empty lobby for an hour is inefficient. Emily tugged Daniel's sleeve. That means yes. 10 minutes later, the 3 of them sat in a red vinyl booth beneath warm lights while rain streaked the windows. Victoria looked almost out of place without a conference table between herself and everyone else. Emily ordered grilled cheese. Daniel ordered coffee and chicken soup. Victoria opened the menu. "What do you recommend?" "Anything except the meatloaf," Daniel said. The waitress passing behind him stopped. "You ate the meatloaf last week." Daniel looked up. "I believe people deserve second chances." Emily laughed. Victoria did too. Something shifted after that. No quarterly targets. No titles. No one waiting for Victoria to approve anything. Emily explained her being experiment with the seriousness of a scientist presenting before Congress, and Victoria listened carefully enough to ask questions. "Do you have kids?" Emily asked suddenly. Victoria shook her head. "No. Do you want them?" Daniel lowered his coffee. "Emily." "What?" "I am making conversation." Victoria smiled, but the question reached somewhere deeper than the child intended. "I do not know," she said. Emily considered that answer, then dipped a French fry into ketchup. "Who waits for you when you get home?" Victoria became still. Outside, tires whispered across wet pavement. Inside, silverware touched plates, and an old country song played softly above the counter. Victoria looked down at her coffee. "Usually nobody." Emily frowned as if this were a practical problem. "Not even a dog." "Not even a dog. That sounds lonely." "Emily," Daniel said gently. Victoria raised one hand. "She is not wrong." Daniel met her eyes. There was no pity in his expression, and somehow that made honesty easier. "My apartment is quiet," Victoria said. "Sometimes quiet is good." Daniel nodded. "Sometimes." And sometimes. He looked toward Emily, who was now constructing a small tower from sugar packets. "Sometimes quiet reminds you what is missing." Victoria held his gaze for 1 second longer than necessary. Daniel looked away first, not because he was uncomfortable, but because he understood that some moments deserve privacy, even when shared. When Victoria's driver finally arrived, Emily hugged her before Daniel could stop her. Victoria froze, then slowly returned the hug. "You should come eat with us again," Emily said. "We make pancakes on Saturdays." Daniel sighed. Apparently invitations no longer require parental approval. Victoria smiled at him. "I will remember that." She stepped into the waiting car, but before the door closed, she looked back through the rain-streaked window. Daniel was holding Emily's backpack over her head while they hurried toward his old pickup, both laughing when the rain defeated the plan. Victoria had spent years building a life people admired from a distance. Watching them cross that parking lot, she felt something unfamiliar and painfully simple. For the first time, she did not want Daniel's competence, his loyalty, or even his respect. She wanted to know what it felt like to be expected home. By Monday morning, Victoria had rewritten Daniel's promotion offer. The travel requirement was reduced to occasional regional visits. Major projects could be managed from Denver, and performance would be measured by results rather than nights spent away from home. Daniel read the revised terms in her office and looked up. "You changed the position." "I corrected the position." "For me?" Victoria held his gaze. "For whoever is smart enough to take it." Daniel almost smiled. "That sounds more like you." "Is that a yes?" "That is a yes." For the next 2 weeks, their working relationship changed in ways neither of them named. Daniel attended more executive meetings, but he still left in time for school pickup. Victoria began asking what he thought before asking what the room thought. Sometimes they disagreed. Daniel never softened an answer because she was chief executive officer, and Victoria slowly discovered how rare that was. Then Grant Whitaker noticed. On a Wednesday afternoon, Daniel entered the break room and found 2 project managers suddenly interested in their coffee. Their conversation stopped when he arrived. One avoided his eyes. The other offered an uncomfortable smile. Daniel poured water and left without asking. 20 minutes later, Grant stepped into his office. "Congratulations on the promotion." "Thank you." "Interesting timing." Daniel looked up from his laptop. "Meaning?" Grant closed the door. "You spend one rainy evening with Victoria, and suddenly the company redesigns an executive track position around your family schedule." Daniel became very still. "Emily was with us." "I did not say she was not." "Then say what you came here to say." Grant smiled faintly. "People are noticing." "People notice whatever gives them something to discuss." "You should care how this looks." Daniel closed his laptop. "I care whether I earn the job." "That is not the same thing." "No, it is more important." Grant leaned against the door. "You are a single father with an old pickup and a very ordinary resume until 6 weeks ago." Victoria Hayes is one of the most influential executives in Colorado. You really believe nobody will wonder why she suddenly finds you so valuable? Daniel stood. His voice remained calm. My work was valuable before she noticed it. Grant's expression hardened slightly. Just be careful. With my work. With your expectations. Daniel watched him leave. He could have dismissed it as jealousy, but by Friday the rumor had traveled farther. An assistant stopped talking when Victoria entered an elevator. Two directors exchanged looks when Daniel joined her at a project review. Nothing was said openly. That made it worse. Quiet disrespect rarely announced itself. It survived by letting decent people pretend they had not heard it. Daniel responded the only way he knew how. He created distance. No unnecessary conversations with Victoria. No coffee after meetings. No stopping at her office unless work required it. When she asked whether Emily's bean plants had survived, he answered politely and returned to the budget report. Victoria noticed immediately. Did I do something? She asked one evening after everyone else had left the conference room. No. Then why have you spent 4 days acting like every conversation with me requires legal approval? Daniel gathered his papers. People are talking. Victoria's expression changed. About us. About why I was promoted. You earned that promotion. I know. Then why do you care what Grant thinks? Daniel stopped. Because I have a daughter who watches how I carry my name. Victoria stared at him. And what exactly are you protecting it from? The idea that I needed something from you besides a fair chance. The answer landed harder than he intended. Victoria folded her arms. So your solution is to avoid me. My solution is to make sure nobody can use you to explain my work. And what if I do not want distance? Daniel looked at her, and for one quiet second neither title nor rumor stood between them. There was only a woman asking a question she was not ready to say plainly, and a man who understood it anyway. Then we have a different problem, he said softly. Victoria's breath caught. Daniel picked up his folder. Good night, Victoria. She watched him walk away. 3 nights later, surrounded by music and crystal glasses at the company's annual gala, Victoria would remember those words after every careful defense she had built around herself became just a little less steady. 3 nights later, Victoria stood beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Hayes Development Annual Gala and discovered that a room filled with 400 people could still feel painfully empty. The ballroom of a downtown Denver hotel shimmered with black suits, evening dresses, polished glassware, and conversations about investments that would be forgotten by breakfast. Victoria had spent 2 hours shaking hands, thanking donors, and smiling for photographs. Daniel was nowhere in sight. He declined the invitation, Grant said beside her. Victoria turned. I did not ask. You were looking. I was looking at the room. Grant lifted his glass. Of course. Victoria ignored him, but the remark stayed with her. Daniel had become distant because people were talking, and now even his absence seemed capable of creating another rumor. She accepted a glass of wine during dinner, then another while listening to speeches she had heard versions of for 10 years. Later, someone raised a champagne toast to the Riverside Project. Victoria drank with everyone else. It was more than she normally allowed herself, enough to soften the careful edges of a woman who treated control like part of her job description. By 11:30, she knew she was tired and had consumed too much to make important decisions. She handed her car keys to her assistant, even though she had not driven there. Those are your office keys, the assistant said gently. Victoria stared at them. That seems like useful information. Her assistant smiled. Your driver is waiting downstairs. Excellent. I am still capable of delegation. The ride home passed beneath wet Denver streets and blurred traffic lights. Victoria sat quietly in the back seat, drinking bottled water while Daniel's words returned to her. Then we have a different problem. She had spent years solving problems with contracts, forecasts, meetings, and decisions. Daniel was different because he had never asked her to solve him. At 12:27, her driver walked her to the lobby of her building and waited until the doorman confirmed she was safely inside. At 12:38, Victoria entered her penthouse, removed her shoes, poured a large glass of water, and stood beside windows overlooking the city. Nobody asked how the gala went. Nobody had left a light on for her. Nobody was waiting to tell her that the grilled cheese was burned. She thought about Emily asking who waited for her when she came home. Usually nobody. Tonight the answer felt heavier. Victoria picked up her phone. She found Daniel's name and stared at it. Do not call him, she whispered. She set the phone down. 10 seconds later, she picked it up again. Across town, Daniel had finished cleaning the kitchen after preparing Emily's lunch for Monday morning. His house was dark except for the light above the stove when his phone began vibrating against the counter. He looked at the screen and frowned. Victoria Hayes. At 12:46 in the morning. He answered immediately. Victoria? For several seconds, she said nothing. Are you all right? Yes. Where are you? Home. Did your driver bring you? Yes. Daniel heard the difference in her voice. Have you been drinking? Victoria closed her eyes. That is an annoyingly responsible question. How much? Enough that tomorrow I may hate tonight. Daniel leaned against the counter. Drink some water. I already am. Good. Victoria looked out over Denver. Every sensible instinct told her to end the call. Instead, she asked, Daniel, why did you not come tonight? Emily had a school project. You could have found someone to stay with her. I could have. But you did not. No. Victoria laughed softly, though there was sadness beneath it. You always choose her. She is my daughter. I know. Silence stretched between them. Daniel did not fill it. He had learned that people sometimes needed quiet more than advice. Victoria pressed one hand against the cool window. Do you know what I hate about you? That feels like a dangerous question after midnight. You make ordinary things look important. Daniel glanced toward the staircase. They are important. Dinner, school pickup, pancakes, being home when somebody walks through the door. Her voice weakened. You make it look like having someone waiting for you is the richest thing in the world. Daniel said nothing. Victoria swallowed. And I think you are right. Another silence. Then she spoke before fear could rebuild the walls around her. Daniel, you are the man I want to marry. His expression changed, but his voice remained steady. Victoria, do not pretend you did not hear me. I heard you. Then answer me. Daniel looked at the clock above the stove. 12:46. Not tonight. Victoria went completely still. What? I am not taking an answer from you tonight. And I am not giving you one either. Why? Because you deserve to remember choosing me. Her eyes filled with stunned silence. Daniel continued gently. Call me tomorrow. Victoria held the phone tighter. And if I am too afraid tomorrow? Daniel looked toward the small hallway light Emily always asked him to leave on. Then be afraid. He paused. And call me anyway. Victoria woke at 7:14 the next morning with a glass of water on her nightstand, her evening dress folded over a chair, and one sentence returning to her with perfect clarity. Daniel, you are the man I want to marry. She covered her face with both hands. Oh no. The worst part was not that she remembered saying it. The worst part was that she remembered meaning it. She also remembered Daniel's answer. Call me tomorrow. Victoria stared at her phone for nearly a minute, but courage seemed easier at midnight than after coffee. At 8:30, she typed a message, deleted it, typed another, and deleted that one too. By 9:15, she had produced 3 versions of an apology that sounded like they had been reviewed by corporate counsel. At 10:12, she finally drove herself to a neighborhood park where Daniel had mentioned taking Emily on Sunday mornings. She found them near a picnic table beside a walking trail. Emily was measuring the height of one of her bean plants while Daniel recorded numbers in her science notebook. Victoria stopped several feet away. Daniel noticed her first. Good morning. That depends. Emily looked up. Miss Hayes. Victoria smiled awkwardly. Hello, Emily. Emily studied her. You look tired. Daniel lowered his head to hide a smile. Thank you for the honesty. Dad says honesty saves time. Your father says many inconvenient things. Emily nodded. Yes. Daniel handed his daughter a small ruler. Why do you not measure the plants near the fountain? Emily looked between them with suspicious intelligence. Are you having a grown-up conversation? Probably. Those take forever. She carried her plants toward the fountain. Victoria waited until she was out of hearing range. I owe you an apology. Daniel leaned against the picnic table. For what? Calling you after drinking. That was not ideal. For putting you in an uncomfortable position. Also not ideal. Victoria exhaled. And for what I said. Daniel's expression changed. Do not apologize for that. She blinked. What? Do not apologize for having feelings. Apologize if you treated someone badly. You did not. Daniel, I called you after midnight and told you I wanted to marry you. I remember. You are being remarkably calm about this. One of us should be. Despite herself, Victoria laughed. Then her expression softened. I embarrassed myself. Maybe. That is supposed to make me feel better? No. It is supposed to be honest. She looked away toward the trees. Daniel gave her a moment before speaking again. Victoria, I did not say no. She turned back so quickly that he almost smiled. You did not. No. You said not tonight. Those are different words. The morning seemed suddenly quieter. A bicycle passed along the trail. Somewhere beyond the trees, children were laughing near a playground. Victoria searched his face. Then what were you saying? Daniel folded his arms loosely. I was saying that if something matters enough to change 3 lives, I want both people fully present when they choose it. Victoria glanced toward Emily. 3 lives. There is no version of me that does not include her. I know. Knowing is easier than living it. Victoria nodded slowly. Daniel continued. I did not want the version of you who might wake up wondering whether I took advantage of a vulnerable moment. I want the version of you who remembers choosing me. The words left Victoria silent. She had spent years around people who rushed to agree with her, impress her, flatter her, and accept whatever she offered before she could reconsider. Daniel had been handed the most vulnerable confession she had ever made, and his first instinct had been to protect her right to make it again. You really meant that, she whispered. Every word. Victoria looked toward Emily, then back at him. What if I remember everything? Daniel's voice softened. Then tell me what you remember. She took a breath. I remember saying I wanted to marry you. And I remember being terrified after I said it. And now. Victoria held his eyes. Now I am sober. Daniel waited. She almost said the words again. Almost. Then Emily came running back, holding one plastic cup triumphantly. It grew half an inch. Victoria laughed, and the moment loosened without disappearing. Daniel looked at her with quiet patience. He was not asking for an answer before she was ready. That was precisely what made her want to give him one. But before Victoria could speak, her phone vibrated. She looked at the screen. Grant Whitaker. 3 missed calls. 1 message. We have a problem. The board received a complaint about you and Daniel. By 9:30 Monday morning, Daniel was sitting across from 3 members of the Hayes Development Ethics Committee, while Victoria waited in a separate conference room 2 floors above. The complaint was anonymous. The accusation was not favoritism, improper influence, a promotion allegedly granted because of a personal relationship between the chief executive officer and an employee. Daniel read the document once and placed it flat on the table. Did Victoria know about my promotion before she offered it? One committee member asked. She created the offer. Did you have a personal relationship with her at that time? No. Have you developed one since? Daniel paused. There are personal feelings involved. The committee member looked up. On whose side? That is not a question I can answer for her. Across the building, Victoria was being asked almost the same questions. Grant Whitaker sat near the end of the table as Chief Strategy Officer, carefully avoiding any appearance of satisfaction. The concern is perception, he said. Daniel received unusual accommodations after spending personal time with you. Victoria looked directly at him. The position was redesigned before that dinner. Grant folded his hands. But people may not know that. Then facts should help them. She opened the promotion file. The original proposal carried a timestamp from Thursday morning. The revised travel structure had been approved Friday afternoon. The diner meal with Emily had happened Saturday. Grant's expression barely changed. That addresses timing. It does not address the appearance of a relationship. Victoria closed the folder. There was no relationship when Daniel was promoted. And now, the room became quiet. Victoria could have denied everything. She could have hidden behind executive language and protected herself with technical truths. Instead, she remembered Daniel saying that dignity mattered most when a person had something to lose. Now there is something I intend to handle responsibly, she said. 2 hours later, Daniel met Victoria in an empty conference room. Neither smiled. I requested reassignment, he said. Victoria stared at him. You what? I asked to report through operations instead of your office. Daniel, you did nothing wrong. I know. Then do not let a rumor punish you. This is not punishment. He stepped closer to the table, keeping his voice calm. If we're going to find out whether there is something real between us, I do not want your authority anywhere near my paycheck. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. You would change your reporting structure because of me? Because of us. The word stopped her. Daniel continued. I want Emily to know that respect comes before romance. I want your board to know I am not using you. And I want you to know that if I stay, It is because I choose you, not because you can promote me. Victoria's eyes softened. You make everything difficult. Only the things worth doing carefully. By Wednesday, the ethics committee confirmed that Daniel's promotion had been supported by documented project results and approved before any personal interaction outside work. His reassignment was accepted voluntarily, placing him under the chief operating officer. The anonymous complaint produced no evidence of misconduct. Grant had lost the only weapon rumor had given him: ambiguity. That evening, Daniel walked toward the parking garage at 5 minutes past 5 and found Victoria waiting beside his old silver pickup. No assistant, no driver, no executive audience. She wore a simple cream blouse beneath a dark coat, and for once she looked less like the woman whose signature moved millions of dollars and more like the woman who had sat in a diner wondering who waited for her at home. You are late, she said. Daniel checked his watch. 5 minutes. I was told you leave at 5. Management has ruined me. Victoria almost laughed, then became serious. I came to finish Sunday morning. Daniel set his messenger bag inside the truck. All right. She took a slow breath. I am completely sober. Good start. I remember the gala. I remember calling you. I remember every embarrassing word. Daniel waited. And Victoria looked directly into his eyes. And I still choose you. The parking garage seemed unusually quiet. Daniel did not rush toward her. He did not turn the moment into a victory. He simply let the words belong to her. Which part do you remember meaning? He asked softly. Victoria smiled through the nervousness she could no longer hide. The part about wanting a life where someone waits for me. She paused. The part about wanting that person to be you. Daniel's expression softened. That is different from marriage. I know. Marriage takes time. I know that too. Emily is part of the deal. Victoria smiled. I was hoping the bean plants were included. Daniel laughed. Then he opened the passenger door. We are having tacos tonight. Victoria looked surprised. Is that an invitation? It is dinner. With Emily? Especially with Emily. Victoria stepped toward the open door, then stopped. Daniel. Yes. What happens now? He looked at her with the same quiet steadiness that had unsettled her from the beginning. Now we stop letting fear make decisions for us. For the first time in years, Victoria climbed into a car without knowing exactly where her life was going next. And for the first time, that uncertainty felt less like losing control and more like being given a second chance. 4 months later, Victoria Hayes was standing in Daniel Brooks's kitchen wearing an apron that said "World's Okayest Cook," while Emily examined a tray of chocolate chip cookies with professional disappointment. They are supposed to be round, Emily said. Victoria looked at the uneven cookies. Round is an outdated standard. Daniel leaned against the counter. That sounds like something a chief executive officer says when she burns dessert. They are not burned. Emily lifted one carefully. This one has structural concerns. Daniel laughed. Victoria pointed at him. You are responsible for teaching her that. I accept full accountability. Outside, snow drifted quietly across the Denver neighborhood, softening the sidewalks and covering Daniel's old silver pickup in white. Inside, the house smelled like coffee, vanilla, and the tomato sauce simmering on the stove. For months had changed surprisingly little, and almost everything. Daniel still left work near 5. Emily still treated her science projects like federal research. Victoria still ran a company that required difficult decisions before most people finished breakfast. But now some evenings ended here. Her coat hung beside Daniel's. Her favorite coffee mug occupied the second shelf. Emily had added Victoria's birthday to the family calendar without asking permission. Nobody had announced when belonging began. It had simply arrived through repetition. Dinner, homework, Saturday pancakes, Sunday walks. Ordinary things, chosen again and again. The ethics committee had closed its review months earlier. Daniel continued reporting through the chief operating officer, and Victoria never interfered with his evaluations or compensation. Grant eventually stopped making comments when facts gave him nothing useful to challenge. Daniel and Victoria had refused to let romance become a shortcut around respect. That patience had cost them nothing worth keeping. After dinner, Emily spread a model bridge across the dining table. It has to hold 15 pounds, she explained. Victoria examined the wooden structure. What does your father think? He says I need more triangles. Your father thinks triangles solve everything. Daniel carried 3 plates toward the sink. History is on my side. Victoria smiled. but her attention drifted toward him. Daniel noticed. What? Nothing. That is rarely true. Emily looked between them. You are doing the weird quiet thing again. Victoria laughed. What weird quiet thing? The one where you look at each other and forget other people exist. Daniel nearly dropped a plate. Homework. I finished it. Then inspect your triangles. Emily rolled her eyes and carried the bridge upstairs to find more craft sticks. The house became quiet. Victoria remained beside the dining table, turning the coffee mug between her hands. Do you remember the night I called you? She asked. Daniel smiled slightly. There are portions of that conversation I have been instructed never to mention. I remember all of it. I know. You told me to ask again. Daniel dried his hands and faced her. I told you to choose again. Victoria stepped closer. Her voice was steady now, without champagne, fear, or embarrassment hiding inside it. I have. Every day for 4 months. Daniel said nothing. I chose you when the board was watching. I chose you when nobody was watching. I chose Emily, burned grilled cheese, science projects, your terrible Saturday pancakes, and leaving important dinners because somebody has school pickup. Daniel raised an eyebrow. My pancakes are excellent. This is an emotional moment. Please focus. He smiled. Victoria took a breath. Daniel Brooks, are you still going to make me ask twice? For several seconds, he simply looked at her. Then he reached into the drawer beside the refrigerator and removed a small velvet box. Victoria's eyes widened. You already had that? 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I was waiting. For what? Daniel opened the box. Until we could both remember the answer. Victoria covered her mouth, laughing through sudden tears. Daniel did not make a speech about destiny. He had learned that love was not proven by dramatic promises. It was proven by showing up after the dramatic moment had passed. Victoria Hayes, he said softly, will you marry me? She nodded before finding her voice. Yes. Footsteps thundered down the stairs before either could say anything else. Emily appeared in the doorway holding her bridge. She looked at Victoria, then Daniel, then the open box. Finally, Victoria laughed. You knew? Emily shrugged. Dad asked what ring size means. Daniel closed his eyes. Confidentiality is not her strength. Emily ran forward and wrapped her arms around both of them. Outside, snow continued falling over an ordinary house where nobody cared who had the largest office or the most impressive title. Months earlier, Victoria had believed wealth meant having enough that you never needed anyone. Daniel had shown her something quieter. Grace was being wanted without being owned. Dignity was being loved without having to earn it through status. And second chances were rarely miracles that appeared all at once. Sometimes they were simply two people choosing each other while fully awake, with a little girl between them, dinner dishes in the sink, and a light left on because someone was finally expected home.